Buenos dias. So coming to you from Guatemala, said it correctly, thank you very much. This is my 5th year going to Guatemala. My name is Mary Adams, and I'm going to talk to you about what Impacto Ministry is. Impacto has been around less than 10 years, and I want to make sure I highlight that because when I list the ministries that this group does, you're going to get exhausted, okay? Impacto is a 501c3. They are officially headquartered in La Plata, Maryland, but they do all of their work in Lago Atitlan in Guatemala. Their ministry statement is to bring salvation, hope, healing, and peace of Christ to Guatemala and other areas of the Spanish-speaking world. And they strive to get the word out into the community that something good is going on and somebody is here who cares. The Lord is good. All the time, the Lord is great, right? The staff for Impacto is Pastor Luis Martinez and his wife, Denora, their daughter, Andrea Mendez, and her husband, Tony, Denora's sister, Dilma Cordero, Sarah Poitras, who spends time in Guatemala and in La Plata, Maryland, and Becca Gruel, who is a new full-time staff member there, who we've met over several years. That is the extent of the staff that's there. Here's the list of ministries that they do. Happy Tummies, which at one point was supporting 300 children. Happy Tummies focus is originally when they went to Guatemala. They went back to Guatemala. They are from Guatemala. Pastor Luis was a pastor here, and then they decided to go back where they thought there was a great need. And Happy Tummies is a group for children. It's an after-school program. These children were malnourished when they first got there. They had no medical attention. Some of them were not getting fed every day. And so they started Happy Tummies, where they come and get a meal after school. They can have all the food they want as long as they eat it all that they take. And they get vitamins, they get medical treatment, they get study time and playtime with volunteers. Abuelitos, which you all may have heard of, the little grandparents. Grandparents were living in, a lot of times when the families don't have enough money, the grandparents either choose to leave or are forced to leave the family home, and they live on church benches. And so they started a program for the abuelitos to get meals and health care, and they are currently building a facility for abuelitos to live in. Pastors Congress, which is a training of over 200 pastors that come to train to be pastors all over the country. And when they come, some of them drive 8 hours to get to these trainings. They train in other areas. They support individual churches that are getting started. They started Stitches for Blessings. That is it's a sewing class so that mostly women can learn to sew and make money for their family. And at the end, when they graduate, they get a sewing machine gifted to them. Zona Cero is a youth program where a couple hundred youth come to the Lake Atitlan and have fellowship and learn about Christ. Happy Tummies Moms, they realized that however the Happy Tummies kids, they needed to also work with the moms and support the moms in their role as mothers to these children. The library, I know that many of you have heard of the library. That's one of our main mission focuses here at St. Matthew's. It was a vision of Marian Eisinger and their sister Mary Parks, who has since passed. Those kids did not have any books at Happy Tummies, there was no local libraries they could go to get books to read, and now there's a full functioning library that also has computer services because the kids were required to do homework online but had no access to the internet or computers. They do Vacation Bible School all over the country. They've expanded their ministry from Lake Atitlan to Zacapa, which is almost a desert region. It's near where jade is mined, and it's much poorer than San Juan, where they've been doing their work on Lake Atitlan. And they do pharmacy, and they have a medical mission, so people can come in who don't have medical care and get treated. So if you can see the number of staff and then the number of things that they have expanded since they started this, it's just incredible work that they're doing. They also, so in addition to all those ministries, which are supported by volunteers, they house, I would say, I don't know, what are you thinking, 1,000? I'm checking with my compatriots here. Many hundreds of volunteers. So feed them, house them, drive them all over the country, all over the area. There are volunteers that go to Zacapa now, which is it's a very long drive. Most of the work, all the work that we do is around Lake Atitlan. So I want to say, so Pastor Luis has this thing. I think the only way to know how all of this happens is to watch it in action. So when we are at Guatemala and watching the staff work and watching the volunteers work, it's just incredible the impact that we've had. And we could not do it without you all and the donations that, the offerings that you give and the money that goes to the missions group and committee and our trips. And we thank you so much. I saw these words, blessed and thankful, and I think we are blessed to have been able to have this partnership with Impacto, because Impacto knows what's going on the ground. A successful mission is not us going and doing it our way there. It's understanding what they need and doing it their way. And we're so thankful to have this group of people. Pastor Luis always says, I have a verse. And so I wanted to share with you their main verse on all of their, I'm just going to hold on one second because it was here and now it's not. Got to scroll down. So Matthew 9, so Mateo 9:36. I love technology. No, it's so funny. I'm scrolling up on my phone, my Bible on my phone, which is really handy, except it keeps going to the beginning. I'm like, wait a minute, I need 36. Yes. Oh, read it out. No, I got it. Chelsea's trying to get me to read it out of the Bible. Imagine. All right, I think I'm just doing it too fast. There's always got to be something when you're up here talking, right? Okay. Can I have the Bible, please? Yeah. 9:36. All right, so this is the verse that they put on. We have many T-shirts and things to fundraise and to earn money for their mission, and this is their verse. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. So that was their motivation to go back to Guatemala. So I guess now Harold's going to share with us some specifics. Thank you very much.
I'm Harold Patterson. I've only gone for the last 2 years. I want to talk to you about the last 2 years that I've been there. As you can tell from the pictures already shown, and as Mary just said, there's a multitude of activities down there. But my favorites to reflect on are the kids and the older folks, the abuelitos, certainly for the 2 trips I attended. As fulfilling as working on a house is, ministering to the most vulnerable among them is the most satisfying to me. Let me tell you a little about those kids and then the older ones. The Happy Tummies sites in 2019 were down from 4 when we were there in 2018 down to 3. Lack of funding, just lack of funding. We take toys to the kids. Each one of us takes a full suitcase full, 50 pounds, and there's a lot of toys in there. And you saw some on. Some are disposable and some are left there, like lots of balls, jump ropes, things they can keep on playing with. Puzzles, lots of puzzles. But the highlight of Happy Tummies, of course, is the lunch program. It's more than food. Each is given a vitamin, and with their lunch, they're served a liquid nutritional supplement. Malnourishment is a problem. They're provided soap to scrub up with before lunch, and they're provided with a toothbrush and toothpaste after lunch. I suspect, based on what I saw, that's the only dental care most of them ever get. The measure of the need for witness to me is they have really good food and seconds are provided. There's only one rule. They can't go back for seconds until everybody's been through one time. I think the measure of the need for me was how many kids I witnessed first out, wolfing down their foods, licking their plates while they waited their turn to go back for seconds. I saw a lot of that. And I want to talk to you about a special case, Juanita. Juanita is the oldest of three up in the high countryside where things are really rough. When we first saw her, she had an open wound in her right eye. She had just had the eye removed in 2018 from what they believed at that time was simply an eye infection that didn't get any kind of antibiotic. When we were back in 2019, she had a prosthetic eye provided by Impacto. In both cases, her beautiful smiles were the same. After our return, we learned cancer was in her eye. So the prosthetic eye has been removed. Prognosis is still undetermined. But Impacto took her to Guatemala City. That's a long way off. That's where we land on the plane. That's a long way off, but they took her there several trips. The surgeon had compassion and did it at no cost. So Impacto only picks up the lodging fees for the parents while they're there. And of course, transportation to get them all there and back. Her prognosis is unknown to me at this time. And then I want to talk to you about the abuelitos. That's the little grandparents, they call them, abuelitos and abuelitas. They're all provided for at one of the four sites. I'm sorry, one of the three sites. They're all in San Juan, the main site. They arrive at, I think, 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 or something like that. They have to be out by 11 so they can feed the kids beginning at 11. But while they're there, they get the same meal that's given to the kids, including the vitamins, the supplemental drink. They get to brush their teeth. And of course, they're provided soap. There were 14 of them in 2019, but there had been 19 in 2018. One man had just died, and I'm not sure the fate of the others. The age range was 62 to 85. Some did not have a place to sleep some nights, so the Catholic Church provides them pews to sleep in. The night before we were there, 1 year, 5 have been sleeping in the pews. But that varies. Sometimes they can go home with their kids, and sometimes they can't. The happiest I've seen them, I think, was the wristbands provided by our M&M group here. We took those the first year I went. I think the measure of their success was several asked for 2, 1 for each wrist. That was followed by soft plush sweaters for the women and hoodies for the men, all soft material compared to what they ordinarily wear. All were put on and stayed on. Most were leaving, petting their sleeves like we would a dog or a cat. They liked that soft fabric. The most compelling moment for me was the tiny woman sitting in a chair, and her feet were way off the floor. It was hard to not notice how calloused her feet were. She was 62 years old. They had bought her shoes, but she wouldn't wear them. It's rough territory in Guatemala. She had never worn shoes. I've never seen such calloused feet. In conclusion, Guatemalans want the best for their children and their older folks, just as we Americans do. They simply lack the means. For your generosity in supporting this important and worthy mission, we thank you, and indeed thank you again and again. As for me, I have committed to returning in June 2020. Thank you.
So I've had the privilege of traveling with our team for the last 3 summers. And as a pastor, one of my biggest joys of this trip is not only the work that we do with Impacto, but watching you all as a congregation and our team come together. It never fails that a day or two before we are to leave, there is something that we have forgotten. There's some detail that has gone unnoticed, and all of a sudden we are asking for something from all of you. And it also goes without fail that as we put out that ask, there are 3 times the amount that we need in my office within hours, right? And I am just so grateful for your generosity and for the ways that God puts together this team each and every year. For the last 4 summers, we have led a women's retreat as part of our time in Guatemala. The first 2 years, this women's retreat was just 1 day long, but we found that there were so many women who wanted to come for this 1-day retreat that we were overflowing the building. And so we worked with Impacto Ministry to run this retreat for 2 days. One at the center where we stay in San Juan, and then 1 day up the mountain held in a host church that allows us to use their space for the day. And these last 2 years, as we've held these 2 different retreats, I have just really been amazed at the ways that our team has shared, at the gifts of music that come. Sometimes we are unsure of our music ability, right, as we are trying to sing hymns in Spanish, and as there are sometimes tunes that we are used to that they are not, and they know the words but to different things, and yet God always sorts it out. And somewhere along the way with Mary on guitar, giving us chords, music happens and praise takes place. And also on these women's retreats, the first few years that we went, there was a lot of sharing from our team. It was team members who were doing all of the reflections, all of the mini sermons. And last year, I started working with Andrea, Pastor Luis's daughter, on what else could this time look like. And for the last 2 years, the majority of our time, while there is a short reflection from a few of our team members, there are also reflections from the women who are gathered. Women who do not often stand at the front of a church, and yet they are leading in small groups, and they are sharing their testimonies. Sometimes they're planned. Sometimes Andrea has asked them to speak beforehand. And then there are the ones who we just open up the floor and we say, would anyone else like to share? And all of a sudden an hour has passed and tears are flowing, and there is just an abundance of the ways that God is at work in their lives. I've been blessed to watch our team over the last few years change and develop, and watch as team members who the first year that they went did not want to say a word in front of that large group, to last year when one of those young women stood in front of that group of 150 women gathered both days and shared a reflection on this Matthew passage. This young woman is one who has grown up in our youth group. And as Hannah came to me as we were preparing for the trip and she said, I think I would like to speak on that Matthew scripture, I was in awe, right? I was amazed, and I just was beaming with pride as she shared those 2 days, as she wrote out her mini sermon, and as she gave it with Andrea as her translator. And that is hard to do. It is hard to speak a line or two and then wait for it to be translated and then to pick up where you left off. And Hannah did it with such grace and such love and compassion. And that moment at that first women's retreat is one that will always stick with me. As we go and as we travel, many of you often say thank you for going, and you are such a blessing. And yet I think if you spoke to anyone on our team, we are just as blessed by our time in Guatemala, as we hope that we have been a blessing to them. And so again, thank you for your generosity through your prayers, through your financial support, through your last-minute gifts in my office. And I hope that as we prepare for this next trip, this trip that'll be at the beginning of June, that as we have info sessions in January and February, that you will think about going. Because there is a lot that we could never quite share with you, right? But that you just have to go and experience it for yourselves. And so I invite you to pray about that opportunity. And we have a few pictures and some music that has been important to us to share with y'all.